Willkommen beim Amazing E-Commerce Podcast mit deinem Host Stefan Gerade. Die Grundlage von E-Commerce ist es, international tätig zu sein. Und aus diesem Grund ist es immer auch sehr spannend zu sehen, wie die E-Commerce Branche in anderen Ländern, anderen Kontinenten tickt. Und aus dem Grund freut es mich heute, internationalen Besuch im Amazing E-Commerce Podcast hier begrüßen zu dürfen. Shane von Reviews.io wird heute mit mir ein bisschen plaudern. Wir werden heute allerdings den ersten Podcast auf Englisch aufnehmen, also ich hoffe für euch, dass das kein Problem sein wird. Bevor wir loslegen, ein herzliches Dankeschön an unseren Podcast-Sponsor Adobe. Wie in den letzten Folgen hat sich Adobe geklärt, dass sie uns unterstützen, um unseren Podcast voranzubringen. Wenn ihr im E-Commerce-Umfeld momentan tätig seid und dabei seid, ein neues Shopsystem auf die Beine zu stellen, solltet ihr auf jeden Fall Magento 2 mit in eure Überlegungen einbinden. Weitere Informationen zu Magento 2 findet ihr dort auf jeden Fall auf der Website. Shane, it's a pleasure to have you here in the Amazing E-Commerce Podcast. It's a first for an English episode. Welcome on board.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be able to be the very first. Absolute pleasure to join.
We do know each other now for, several months now, but please, could you just do a short introduction for our listeners who don't know you, who haven't been in contact with you or your company? Just tell them, what's your history? How did you join the e-commerce industry? And how did it come that you're now currently based in Berlin?
Sure. So as you can probably hear, definitely not German. The accent probably gives it away very quickly. Actually moved to Germany about 12 years ago now. Moved from Australia, where typical story, finished uni, decided that the town which I was living in Brisbane, isn't the most, say, tech-affine city which you can possibly find. So it was either a case of moving to Sydney, moving to Melbourne, or moving to the other side of the world. The other side of the world definitely sounded much more attractive, and decided to take the jump. Started in e-commerce at Quelle, actually, just before they went bankrupt. I think my very first day at the company was the day that they announced the insolvency. Luckily, it was only an internship to get some money in the door as I moved here. But then very quickly, I was there for 3 months, ended up moving over to Karlsruhe, where I worked at a price comparison vendor. I was there for about 3 years, looking after all the UK business, before moving to Berlin, where I've now been here for about 8 years. Started at the UK version of Gutscheinsammler, helping them launch the UK market, before a short stint at Zenloop, was there for about 4 months, and now I'm launching reviews.io in the German-speaking region.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've quite seen a lot of companies in a lot of different places. As you mentioned, your hometown is not that tech place, but I think we had a chat last week where you told me that one of the most trending payment startups was also founded at your hometown, Fast.co.
True. So the founder of Fast.co, I'm not sure exactly how they say it. The founder is actually from Brisbane. He's a fairly known startup founder there. He had a site called tocars.com.au, I think it was, before moving to San Francisco to launch this payment startup. Doing extremely well. But it's nice to see, despite Brisbane not being the most advanced technology city, them getting, say, representation on the international scale, and they're doing swimmingly well. If anyone ever wants to see a masterclass in launching a, say, SaaS platform on Twitter, definitely follow them. I think it's @fast is their Twitter handle. What they've done is incredible. And it's nice that there's also a Australian behind that too, as a little plug.
Sounds good to me. Now, one of my main questions to you is, what are the differences in your personal behavior or in the circumstances that you experience while moving from Australia to Europe? What are the main differences also regarding e-commerce that you get to know, and give us some insights here on the international focus?
Sure. So when I moved, e-commerce in Australia was still very, very young. I remember after moving here, I purchased Christmas toys for my younger brother. It's one of the biggest, say, retailers there called Kmart, and I think I purchased the product on the 10th of December, and it didn't reach them before Christmas. Right. This is obviously going now back a good 11 years. But here in Europe, that would have been completely crazy. I still remember ordering headphones when I studied here in 2000, I think 2007, and the concept of next day delivery was just mind blowing for me. Right. Obviously, a lot has changed then in many different ways. Australia's caught up a lot, but moving from a country where e-commerce was still extremely new, massive issues with logistics. Obviously, Australia is a very big country with big gaps between the different cities. Everything was just on overdrive here in many ways. So jumping forward a good, say, 8 years to where Australia would potentially catch up was a big change. Everything was way more advanced, and that was definitely being thrown in the deep end. Now, obviously, Australia has caught up a lot, and it's much more advanced. A lot of really good tech companies coming out of Australia, especially Sydney and Melbourne. But at the start, yeah, it was like jumping forward a complete generation, basically.
Yeah.
To what it is here. And yeah, it's still definitely a long way to go. Delivery is still a massive topic there. It still takes forever to get anything delivered. But yeah, they're definitely catching up very quick. And our Australian market for us here is also doing swimmingly well. It's by far our fastest growing market.
Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely got a long way to catch up still.
So same day delivery as we know it, especially from Germany or in some regions here in Austria as well, is not the main priority that people can expect in
Definitely.
Australia from their online shop.
Definitely not. I think my mum sent a letter the other day. It took, I think, 3-4 days for it to arrive, and that's still within the same state. Here, if a letter doesn't arrive into the next, or say any other city within Germany, people are outraged. So even just like the basic services, just take longer. It's a 4 hour drive from the town which I grew up to Brisbane, and for German standards, that's a long drive. For Australians, that's an afternoon drive. So that kind of just puts things into perspective, and factoring in then obviously the remote nature of a lot of towns. Yeah, a next day delivery is absolutely obscene. Something like gorillas here would not work in Australia whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's one of the things that I'm very interested in is because we see it here in Europe that each and every country, the customers have some separated topics they are looking for in an online shop. Especially in Germany, it's the fast delivery, best within some hours and not days. In Austria, it's the regional aspect to have contact details here in Austria. For Spain, it's the Spanish language, for example. In France, you need to have their local payment methods. So, and Europe is way smaller than Australia is. How is it in Australia? Is it there one country and everybody has the same needs? Or is it quite the same as in Europe, where each and every district has their intention to look for other details?
no, I think pretty much all of Australia is the same mentality. Is probably the best way to put it. Yeah, there's not really any sort of real big differences, say, between Brisbane and Perth, right? That'd be like comparing London to Rome, right? Very big gaps, but it's largely the same country and the same mentality. Obviously, people from Brisbane and Perth would probably have a big problem with me saying that, but in the grand scheme of things, it's literally the same thing. People pay with credit card for most of the topics. There is their equivalent of Klarna coming in now. I think it's called Afterpay. But by and large, it's the same needs, the same requirements, the same expectations, regardless of where they are within the country.
So as currently what I'm expecting, there are a lot of Australian companies coming to Europe, and as well what I see is that a lot of European companies discovered Australia within the last 2 to 3 years as the holy grail in e-commerce, because it seems are a lot of opportunities, a lot of cool brands that are just known within their region and are now trying to expand. So what's your view on this topic?
I think Australia's been a very interesting country for a lot of e-commerce retailers for a while, especially English-speaking ones. I remember back in 2000, I think 2012 even, Australia was ASOS's largest market outside of the UK. They were literally sending a 747 full of clothes every week to Australia simply because there's so many people purchasing there. So international stores have in many ways had a advantage within the Australian market. They at least used to be. I'm not sure if it is still the case, where Australians could import goods up to $1,000 worth without paying tax. So they would
Wow.
purchase,
Okay.
they'd purchase, say, a camera, a TV, a PlayStation from America, bring it in, not pay tax. And not only was the product cheaper from America, even paying the postage, even paying all of that, it still worked out to be way, way, way cheaper. Naturally enough, a lot of the Australian retailers, such as Harvey Norman and Jerry Harvey, were very prominent electronics retailer there. Started a campaign to the government like this isn't fair. This isn't fair to the local businesses. Australian consumers naturally didn't like it because they were getting a great deal, and Jerry Harvey, for lots of people, isn't a very loved personality, and feel that the prices are too expensive there. But in many, many ways, Australia has been quite an interesting country for lots of retailers simply because they have money to spend, put it simply. And retailers from English-speaking countries, it's a natural expansion country, especially as e-commerce is growing very, very quickly there. But I think that focus now is coming also to, I'll say, non-English-speaking companies, so German retailers, Austrian retailers, because they do realize, okay, we've gone to the European countries, we've gone to the UK, maybe not the USA, obviously, because it's such a massive, massive country and very hard to tackle that from a competitive point of view. But Australia is still pretty green and ripe pickings, and Australia is becoming a lot more of a topic for a lot of international stores.
Sounds really interesting, and it's a topic where I would like to get an exchange with you and some other guys from down under more on a more regular basis, because I think it's a huge topic also for European brands, because I think made in Austria, made in Germany are well known brands also down under.
Yep, definitely, definitely. That is still that same respect for, say, German, Austrian, Swiss quality is still there. Sure, everything just costs more because of the exchange rates, because of imports, all of that. But that still, the same sentiment of quality is still there. There's plenty of, say, shows there. Like Australia has a very big DIY home building culture, right? And there's a show there called The Block. It's a competition who can renovate this house and sell it for the most money. And they always champion Gaggenau as the holy grail of appliances. And it's just like, yeah, they're super expensive, but just that simple, I think it's German made. I'm not 100% sure, but simply just that, it's a European brand. That stands for quality. That still definitely applies there. And Australian consumers are also willing to spend that extra money for quality. They just have good propensity for spending.
The only thing that really freaks me out with Australia is the currency conversion Austrian dollars to US dollars. The first time you see any price tag, you're what the fuck is going on here? Especially if you're looking at cars, houses. It's wow. That's one of the things you need to get used to.
Yeah, definitely. Things are gotten expensive very quickly since I left. The first time I returned back, so I left Australia in 2009. I think the first time I went back was in 2012. And as a very simple example, a meat pie and a can of Coke was a standard $5 meal. When I went back, it was $8 to $9, and that's only in 3 years' time. So things are getting really expensive really quickly there. It's one thing which I have definitely noticed. Housing is obscene. You can't buy a house in Sydney or Melbourne for under $1 million. At least in a decent
US dollar or Australian dollar.
Australian dollar, yeah. So it'd be about, I think about 650,000 euros. And it's just getting more and more expensive every day.
Okay, let's switch topic because I think the prices for houses are a completely different topic to discuss on. One thing that I would like to mention is you working for Reviews.io, and we had the discussion I think for a lot of times, as a lot of e-commerce merchants still think that reviews are quite a tricky way to get in contact with people. They don't want to be judged on their own website, or their product should not be judged. On the other hand, it's consumer generated content. It's real reviews you get, which help other clients, which help me as a merchant to see if my products are good quality or if there is some problem. What's your you're biased, but what's your personal opinion on reviews? What does make sense? When do reviews make sense, or are there some topics where you say, okay, it doesn't make sense at all?
It's a good question. I think for pretty much every retailer, especially in, let's say, the 21st century, that voice of the customer is ever more important. Not only for the sense of putting the voice of the customer towards the front of your marketing, right? Letting other customers speak for you. More and more brands are taking advantage of that. And when you look at, say, statistics where consumers trust the word of other consumers more than what they trust the messaging from the brand, that's just becoming more and more prevalent and important to at least have some mechanism to collect the feedback, to use that in ways to let the customer speak for you. Obviously, there's a lot of topics around retention, using this for marketing purposes, using this as a customer satisfaction tool, also, where the retailers need to look at what makes sense for me. If you have a product which is very sensitive, say a fertility tool or surgeries, right? Having a consumer talking about their health impacts, may not be the best way, or may be very sensitive, and particularly here within, say, the German-speaking region, where they are also very privacy focused. That may not always be the best way to put that on a public standing without at least being very, very clear with the consumer what is going to happen there. But I think for most products, shoes, shirts, TVs, computers, that's not a problem. No one's going to be saying something sensitive about them personally if they buy a laptop and give feedback there. Mm. In terms of when it makes sense for a retailer, obviously every company should be doing it. There's obviously costs involved there, so it kind of becomes a question of when is the ROI there for me. And it's largely just around what phase they are in terms of their life cycle, right? So a very small startup needs to save costs. There's definitely a lot of, I'll say, free or cheap apps there to facilitate that, to at least get the ball moving, get it started, and move in the right direction. But at some point, most retailers will grow out of that free or cheap app system. where they need to get something that is a bit more connected, a bit more advanced, where they can use that as the foundation for growth in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years time. Because anytime you have to change systems, that's a huge pain. It's work. It's never easy work. And getting that correct from the very start just makes sense.
Okay. I'm currently facing some challenge with one of our service partners. We're having some troubles on a professional level, and now I'm talking to them. I hope we will find a solution, and I took some time to see through the reviews he got throughout the last 2 to 3 years. And what I experienced there is that nearly everybody that is posting reviews there is having the same issues that I'm currently experiencing. So, what's your recommendation if someone is in a similar situation? Um, how do you get to know if you should really take an advice of these reviews, or if you can also be sure, are they real reviews or are they fake? Are they from a competitor? I think that's very tricky, even for us who are working in the e-commerce industry and we're working with reviewers on a daily basis, to really get the hang out which are real, which are fake, which are of competitors. It's really difficult.
It is, and there's a lot of say difficulty in the transparency side of things too, right? Amazon lately has received a lot of criticism about say fake reviews on the site, especially say via Chinese product sellers, where they're incentivized to game the system, right? And anytime there's money involved, there's always going to be that potential issue that someone's going to game the system, whether it is reviews or Google search rankings or anything that is money involved. There's going to be that incentive there. For the consumers, I really think it's just a matter of sort of having a healthy level of skepticism. Firstly, to not always believe everything which you are reading, but to also compare the positives to the negatives, right? No company is ever going to have 100% positive feedback, and if they do, we generally say, run for the hills. It's not a real thing. You can't make every single customer happy. So, looking at what issues what topics are discussed in the negative feedback, seeing is that a consistent issue? Is that being improved, or were people say 6 months ago having the same issue as what they have today? So therefore, the retailer hasn't taken that on board, hasn't changed their processes, haven't resolved the issue. But that's still always possible to potentially fake feedback, have spam going in. And that is where I think a lot of platforms, say ours, to their credit, trusted shops, Trustpilot, it is one of the biggest issues which the industry has. And we're all doing a lot of work to try to find a way to really tackle that, and be honest about the situation. So building that trust with consumers as a platform is a big part of it, knowing that, okay, the reviews on platform X is trustworthy, having the brand stand behind that. Today, though, I genuinely feel that the average consumer, say us within the industry, we're in a bit of an echo chamber. So we are very aware and see the issues much more than what, say, parents would, friends would, simply because they're not in the echo chamber. That the average consumer doesn't really understand today whether reviews on, say, Reviews.io or Trusted Shops or Trustpilot or any other platform, how trustworthy they actually are. They largely just want to see that the reviews are real. Firstly, that they can be verified with a third party who isn't the retailer. and that third party is a trustworthy source. So there's a lot of subtle impressions which they get about the platform. See, is this a trustworthy source? If they can only see the reviews on the shop site, then it really just becomes a topic of the retailer could have just written them themselves. I can't tell the difference. If they can at least see it on a third-party site, then they know, okay, it's very unlikely that they have control over the third-party site and what this third-party site is publishing. It's a difficult topic, definitely. So hopefully one that we can, as an industry, address. I do think it is getting better, and there are definitely better sites than others. As before, Amazon have massive problems as a consumer. I also see that, but it's definitely getting better and one that we are all working to tackle.
Okay. I think from my personal perspective, reviews are an excellent opportunity to get in contact with clients, customers who are not satisfied, and it's a potential way of getting information. What did went wrong in the complete process? How did it get to that point that they're really writing that the negative review? And it's not just the content side, it's not just the marketing side where reviews are absolutely awesome, but it's also a good way for me personally to gain knowledge about my own company, what's going wrong, what didn't work out as we promised maybe to the client. And I think a lot of companies should use it that way too.
Definitely. It's something which I actually recommend to most of our, say, startup clients, where they're in the phase still to not only look at every single piece of feedback which is coming in, but to also personally take action on it, right? So if you are a small startup, you're just selling your very first products, and the quantity of reviews coming in is still within a manageable amount where you can do it on a manual basis. If there's an issue, which is say maximum of a 10% of the reviews which you actually get coming in, pick up the phone, call the person, assuming you have the phone number, because when, as a consumer, did you ever receive a call from a company which you purchased from? Never. It never happens. So even though this person had a problem, they're firstly going to be absolutely amazed that somebody called them, that the owner of the business called them. Then the chance, if they need to vent personally, and then you, as the business owner, really hear and understand what this person felt went wrong, and use that as the ability to correct course, change things. If you see that, okay, DPD has delivery issues, does it make sense to change here? Or are my products breaking? Do I need to be changing something there? To really understand what has gone wrong for you to be able to address that. Obviously, that becomes a bit of a topic when you start to scale. You're not selling, I'll say, 100 products a month. You're selling 100,000 products a month. That needs a whole different set of systems. You need a lot of, say, semantic analysis to understand what is going on. But the same basic principles apply. Understanding what the consumers are saying as the issues, and also what's going well. To double down on the areas that the consumer loves, put that front and center. If they love the little goodie that you put in the box, put more goodies. They love that. So it's not just about the negative sides to improve, but also identifying what do consumers actually love and push that front and center more. And that's where I think a lot of retailers really miss when it comes to the feedback. They just focus on the negative, improving the negative side of things, which is natural, that is normal, but also identifying what consumers love. Double down there, so you increase the good side of things, not just minimizing the bad sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's jump into another topic as our podcast is about to end. What are your personal learnings throughout the last 12 months? I think everybody agrees it was a very different year. And what are your expectations from 2021? What will happen to the e-commerce industry? What will happen to us as persons? What are your thoughts here?
I think, as we've all seen, we've all taken a few years jump ahead. Where we were expecting to be as an industry in 2025, let's just say, we're there now, right? Online shopping, online delivery is just become much, much, much more of an everyday topic. Our parents are now buying things online much more often. It's just becoming a much more common situation. That's not going to change now that people have, say, been exposed to getting their groceries delivered. They may decide, 1 week out of 4, not going down to Lidl or to Aldi or to Riva to go purchase, but getting that delivered. That's not really going to change, I don't think. But that also brings what the expectations behind that are. The service that consumers received in a store, they're now going to start to expect that from the online channel. So I think the biggest challenge that a lot of retailers are going to have is, how do I extend my offline experience to the online world? Even if they didn't have an offline store, how do they bring that offline world service into their online store? And I think that largely comes down to, they can't touch and feel products. They can't get exposed to how the products are, especially whilst it's still in lockdown mode. They can't go down to their local media market, go check out a TV, touch it, feel it, see the size of it, and then go buy it on Amazon, right? They need to find ways to bring that into the home, whether it is, say, reviews via photos or videos, sure, but there's definitely a lot of other technologies to be able to do that. Those expectations are just going to keep on increasing, and that's not going to change anytime soon. In terms of what our learnings have been, I think it's largely the same. Consumer expectations have gone up. Consumers want more, they expect more. Whilst they are mindful of the struggles that retailers have had during this phase, on the flip side, they're consumers. They don't care too much. They just want that their service goes fluid. There's zero problems, and if there are problems, that they are there available to actually support. Because at the end of the day, online shopping for a lot of consumers is a new thing still, despite it being very established here. So that hand-holding, making sure that everything is okay, all those first-time buyers, making sure that their first orders are amazing service, that doesn't change. It's just become a lot more scaled for a lot of retailers, and they need to be very mindful of continuing to deliver that service.
It absolutely was a pleasure to have this chat with you. As I mentioned earlier, I really would love to chat with you again to get some exchange on the international focus. I hope the session was okay for you, and if some of our listeners do have questions regarding reviews, regarding you as a person, I think they can contact you via LinkedIn the best.
LinkedIn's probably best. Shane Forster, Forster. Either LinkedIn, email's fine, don't mind. Shane@reviews.io. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm a hard guy to miss.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Liebe Zuhörer, ich hoffe auch für euch war diese erste englische Folge genauso spannend wie für mich. Wenn ihr Fragen habt für Shane oder mich, meldet euch jederzeit gerne. Ich werde auch den Kontakt sehr gerne natürlich herstellen. Wenn euch der Amazing E-Commerce Podcast Freude bereitet, ihr gute Insights mitnehmen könnt, bewertet uns bitte auf iTunes mit 5 Sternen, helft uns in unserer Reichweite auch zu wachsen. In diesem Sinn, ich wünsche euch einen sensationellen Tag und freue mich, euch bald wieder hier begrüßen zu dürfen. Bis bald!